What's up, Weirdo Swarm? You're listening to another episode of Podagon Infinity, the podcast that opens the door to all things King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. My name is Spencer.
And my name is Joe, and if you are a regular listener of the show up until this point, you're used to usually hearing my voice first on the show, but we're doing things a little odd this time around, and for good reason. We are taking a step back in time and discussing the wonderful old Giz classic Oddments today. We decided after the last couple album discussions were more recent albums, the last two being Ice Death and changes before that, we wanted to jump back to a simpler time in the Giz catalog.
Yeah, simpler time for sure, and that's actually in a quote pretty directly reflected by Stu, which we'll get to a little bit later. So yeah, we're jumping way back in time here. In fact, about 11 years. This album came out in March of 2014, and here we are in 2025. Where has the time gone? Holy crap. 2014 was the year I graduated college and was just starting my career. Yeah, it feels like an eternity ago. So much has happened in the world and in our respective lives since then. But yeah, man, this is going to be a fun episode to talk about, and probably a little more laid back in nature after the very dense Ice Death Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava, which was our previous episode. If you haven't heard that one yet, please go back and check it out. But yeah, this is going to be a lot different of a feel, and I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of exactly why we did it this way. After a couple really dense, Ice Death was so dense lyrically. All the songs are super long and complex, and there's a lot to analyze, both musically and lyrically there. So yeah, excited to go back to a simpler time and talk about this one here, where the longest song is only a little over 4 minutes or so. So yeah, much different time. Before we get in too deep on all things that are Oddments, we have a couple listener messages this week, so we want to go ahead and read those off first. Spencer, you want to start that off for us?
Yeah, our first message is actually in the form of a comment on Facebook. Through my personal Facebook account, I made a post in the King Giz fan page, Facebook group, and Ryan S. commented on a post that I made, and Ryan says, "Loving it, guys. Did you ever consider other names?" Talking about for the podcast as a whole. Nonagon is my second favorite album. Great name. Could have went with, not sure, but I would have went with maybe Dragonic Apocalypse or Dawn of Eternal Night and Annihilation of Planet Earth and the Beginning of Merciless Damnation. So Ryan came up with a fun idea there, and I have to say that's creative, that's funny. We did throw around a few various suggestions for the thumbnail artwork and for the title of the podcast itself. A couple of the names we threw out ahead of time were the Gizzard guys. That was my suggestion because I'm a sucker for alliteration. There was also a famous podcast for many years called Gilmore Guys, which two guys discussing the show Gilmore Girls. So again, alliteration rules. Made in Podland was another one I came up with. It wasn't really high on my list of pitches to Joe necessarily. Joe, I think you came up with the one Gizzard Kings and Lizard Things.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even remember which one of these I may have come with and which ones you did, but I just always know from the beginning when we discussed the couple name ideas that we did have, you had Podagon Infinity as one of the suggested names, and that was the one that immediately drew me in from the beginning, so I'm glad we went that route. But yeah, some of these other ones, like we tried to play off of other potential albums, like you, Ryan, you mentioned Dragonic Apocalypse. I mean, that's another probably the other closest one as far as squeezing the word pod into an album title, but yeah. I think it's just a little bit of a mouthful and not as easy to throw out there and fit into social media handles and whatnot. So, but thank you anyway. I appreciate the suggestion.
Yeah, and I think sometime after this episode drops, we'll make a post on social media because I am still in possession of those art files where I came up with these like visual concepts of what the thumbnail artwork might look like for each of these shows. A couple are pretty rudimentary, pretty basic, but I would like to share those sometime just to give people a taste of, what could have been or what might have been in a parallel universe, if you will. We also got an email recently from our friend Jeremy C., who has reached out multiple times, reached out with some artists and band suggestions. Oysterhead, a nice super group with Les Claypool, a great bassist, of course, of Primus fame, also with Trey Anastasio of Fish and Stuart Copeland from The Police. I gave that a brief listen earlier this week. Definitely worth checking out. He also recommends the band Opeth, which I am not familiar with. I'll have to check that out myself. Shaky Graves for some country feels. Jeremy also says, the person I think who would make a great addition to King Gizzard. That's a question we posited some time ago. He suggests Shaky Graves for that. And also the Gandharvas. So check those out when you get the chance, listeners. Thank you, Jeremy, for the suggestions. Joe, we have one more message to get to this week. You want to hit us with that?
Yeah, our last question comes from our buddy Matt from Wales. He's reached out a few times now. Matt says, "Good morning, brothers. Question for the pod." And he just sneaked this message in just this morning, right in time before we recorded this one. So good on you, Matt, for getting right in there in time. Question for the pod. What has been the best album y'all reviewed so far, and what album are you looking forward to reviewing that you haven't done yet? Sending love as always, Matt from Wales. Again, thank you, Matt. We appreciate hearing from you. So when you say best album, I'm just going to take that as like which one was our favorite to talk about so far, or which one we've had the most fun discussing, not actually like which of the ones we've covered so far are our favorites. I don't know, but I'm going to just go with that. Sticking to the theme, actually, of what we're talking about today with another mix and match grab bag of an album, Gumboot Soup, I remember, was a ton of fun to talk about. It was unique because that was the first one we did where it wasn't like a consistent concept album, and it was just kind of a mix of different songs, and it was fun to pick, like, okay, which studio sessions might have each of these songs come out of, what album were they maybe meant to be on from that year originally, and all that. So that was a lot of fun. And also, speaking of Petro was insanely fun to talk about as well. I feel like it was just such an adventure going through and describing the progression of the fantastical apocalypse story that exists within it. It also has my favorite episode title that we've come up with so far, which was Shakespeare If He Was Badass and Cared About the Environment, which I have to give myself kudos for that. That was my idea. I don't even know if I said that in the episode, but I remember like messaging you like, hey, this is what we got to call the episode.
Yes. Yeah. You messaged me that directly.
Yeah. We talked about how the lyrics are super poetic, but obviously it's a badass shredding thrash metal album. So yeah, really fun time with that one. You also asked, which ones we're looking forward to covering in the future. I will say one thing that I would love to do sometime soon is jump back into the microtonal world of things and do KG and LW at some point shortly. I love those albums in general. They are chock full of banger tracks that have become live show staples. And also it would be a little easier than the Flying Microtonal Banana episode because we don't have to explain again what microtones are and whatnot. And that was definitely probably the hardest part of that episode. So, that way we could just jump right into it like, hey, if you listen to the banana one, and you're good to go. You're ready for this. And, but you know what? One other thing I just wanted to say is on the other end of the spectrum, albums that I'm not looking forward to covering, I am very nervous to eventually discuss Murder of the Universe and Polly. Mm-hmm. They are super dense, story-driven albums, and they're some of my favorites. They're classics. I love them. I love them very much, and that almost makes it even harder and more nerve-wracking because I want to do them justice when we eventually get there. But those ones are gonna be tough. I'm sure you're with me on that, Spencer. We've 100%. Actually had this conversation multiple times. We're pushing those ones down the road as long as we can.
We're really kicking the can down the road on those ones. Yeah, I was just going to say that exactly. Yeah. Just to give my 2 cents on both sides of this question that you sent in, Matt. Thank you again, by the way. I'm glad, Joe, that we didn't end up having any overlap on our thoughts on this one. Personally, I felt that we really nailed our discussion on the album Changes. That's one that's very close to the top of my list, I will say. And listening back, I felt our analysis was thorough, strong, and effective, but I remember also being fun at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And just listening back to that one, that has to be like upper echelon for me in terms of the albums we've already covered, in terms of how we did the music justice in terms of our analysis, but also having a hell of a lot of fun with it. So Changes was the first one that came to mind for me on that side. As for what I'm looking forward to the most, I would say Omnium Gatherum is definitely up there. There are a small handful of songs that are just for me like Giz all-timers, like contenders for some of my all-time favorite songs by the band. There's also another grouping of tracks that are maybe not necessarily all-timers, not like God tier necessarily, but that I still enjoy very, very much. And there really aren't, in my opinion, too many weak tracks, if any, on that humongous-ass album. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Sketches is also one that I'm looking forward to discussing in the future as well. So, of course, we are all going to get to these albums eventually, even the aforementioned Kicking the Can Down the Road with the Complex Polygon Dwanaland and Murder of the Universe. But Yeah, that's those are our thoughts and feelings on that. So thank you once again, Matt. We appreciate the question and spurring that discussion topic on. Joe, you ready to get into a little bit of the background on this fun collection we call Oddments?
Yeah, speaking of all these album discussions, let's get right into the one at hand for today, Oddments. Oddments was, as you mentioned, released way back in 2014, which doesn't feel that long ago, but also feels like a lifetime ago to think of where I was way back then. I was still in high school. You said you were graduating college at the time, so you're just a little bit older than me, but a lifetime ago pretty much at this point with how far we've come, and especially within the world of the band with how much has happened and how much music they've made since then. It came out on March 7th of 2014 to be specific, and I have a quote here that I just want to read from kglw.net right at the top just to kind of summarize the whole idea of this album. I think it's a great quote. Oddments is a loose collection of lo-fi psych songs that were created outside of other whole album projects or for abandoned concepts, representing several paths that the band never went down. These are some of the most unique KGLW songs that tie up the loose ends of their early period for bigger and better sounding projects. And I think that's a great way to kind of summarize what's going on here. This was the first Odds and Ends album of theirs, and this is kind of a similar idea to what we hit on when we discussed Gumboot Soup, and eventually later down the road, Omnium Gatherum was the same kind of thing. So we've sort of had 3 albums with this kind of idea where they just have all these extra songs that didn't fit on a previous album and, just kind of had these lives of their own that they didn't necessarily develop into a full concept. It's just like, here's a bunch of different songs, put them together into a little project, and what better, more fitting name for this first one than Oddments? It's truly just too appropriate.
I want to partially quote some of Stu's remarks from the album liner notes. There was, by the way, a reissue in 2018 of this album, and quite a bit of liner notes included on that one, so I was able to pull a bunch of those from the album page on kglw.net. Some of Stu remarks include, quote, "Our last innocent record, maybe. I think it was a full stop at the end of a period of adolescence," end quote. There is a lot of youthful energy on this album, and it's very clear to me on select tracks that we'll talk about that, these songs were written by a much younger Stu or a much younger Cookie or Joey. This is just such a different time and place for the band as a whole and for the guys as individuals. Chronologically for the band and its discography and their careers, this album was released right smack in between Float Along, Fill Your Lungs and I'm in Your Mind Fuzz. It represents arguably a crossroads for the band, I think. You can hear a lot of the past few records here as far as the sounds that are present on various songs, as well as some fleeting tastes of sounds that would appear on future releases. So it's a little bit of a look back, but also kind of a sneak peek at what was to come for the band on some of the upcoming albums that would release in the ensuing years. So that really kind of sums up the mixed bag of content we're going to be getting on this album. So really, that's kind of our summation of what we're getting into on this album as far as how much of a mix it is between the past and the future of what's to come in the band's career and discography.
Just a couple other Stu quotes related to this that I think may have also come from those reissue liner notes that you mentioned. He touched on where the name of the album comes from, other than it just being pretty self-explanatory of like all these songs are it's just an odd collection of these weird songs that don't go together. But he has a quote here that it's a little more specific than that. "We used to go to the local grocery store and pick up what was labeled as an oddment. This was, my understanding at the time, a delicious can of soda left over from a larger pack sold at a discounted rate. We were poor, thirsty young men looking for a bargain, and this sugar kick fueled the record. It also fittingly described the nature of the songs. Leftovers, potpourri, a bubble and a squeak of a record." So yeah, that gives us the full picture of where they're coming from at this point. They're young guys, teenagers or early 20s at the time, just, fueled up on sugar, drinking cheap soda that they could afford, and throwing together these very youthful, energetic, unique lo-fi songs, some of which were, recorded in people's homes and all sorts of things outside of a real professional studio. And it really perfectly puts you in the time and place of how this album is being brought together. I also just have to mention, especially in juxtaposition with the last album that we covered, Oddments is 12 tracks that total only 32 minutes and 7 seconds, as opposed to like our last coverage of Ice Death, where it's 7 songs that were I think over an hour total, if I'm remembering correctly. On Oddments, the longest track is 4 minutes and 36 seconds, which is work this time. And the shortest is a mere 17 seconds, A, B, A, B, C, D, which will be a fun one to get to. So this is, as we've said multiple times already, this is a different time. This is a different Giz. I almost can't even recognize these guys with what I know from them now. And one other little thing that we haven't mentioned so far, just right before we jump into the track by track here, the album cover is fantastic. It is just so fitting. It's just this messy, psychedelic, trippy collection of sketches and characters and all this craziness done by Jason Galea. I also saw it referred to on kglw.net as the first opus of Jason Galea. So, Spencer, are you able to confirm for me, was this the first official album cover that he did for them?
I seem to remember that he had a hand in 12 Bar Brews previous to this, and he was at least partially responsible as well for Float Along, Fill Your Lungs. But I think this is by far the kind of the first sign of what we would see from Jason Galea as we know him today, like the psychedelic art master, that kind of style. That's where this first sort of appears, in my opinion. Yeah,
I think maybe this was the first fully illustrated by him alone album cover. I think maybe that's what they're referring to as the first opus of Jason Galea. This is a fully solo artwork by him. So awesome stuff. The beginning of a great long era that continues until this day. So, okay, enough yapping about all that. Let's get into the track by track. Track number 1, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. This is just kind of how I say it. Aluda Majaka, maybe? Let's get into it.
Aluda Majaka to you, too. It almost sounds like a greeting or something.
Yes, Aluda Majaka.
Well, this opening track greets the listener with just this abrupt burst of sound and noise, and I always felt that this reminds me of when you forget how loudly your phone volume is cranked, and then you open Instagram, and then a reel just blasts you with this unexpected noise. Yes. You're like, turn it down. But to explain it a little more thoroughly, this song samples heavily from an Indian film from the 1990s. Specifically, it's a Tollywood movie. That's Tollywood with a T. I learned going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here. Many of us know the term Bollywood, referring to the Indian film industry centered around the city formerly known as Bombay, now primarily called Mumbai. But there's another sort of region of India called Telangana, where there's sort of another epicenter of film production in India. So that's where this comes from. But there's samples throughout this track of horses whinnying. There's someone getting just beat to shit, it sounds like, just having punch after punch thrown at them. There's like a comic-sounding gunshot that pew! There's a helicopter, I think, at one point. Yeah. Anyway, the KGLW.net page does link to, it's basically this action chase scene at the beginning, near the beginning of this film. And that's where all these sample sounds are taken from.
Yeah, and also, just to point out, I don't think you mentioned, but the song's title is also the title of this film that they're sampling, so that's where they got the name from. Yeah, it's a completely chaotic mess of an introduction. There's so many things happening at once that just throws you right in this whirlwind of, God, what the hell is going on? And immediately, this album is unrecognizable as Giz, at least coming from a modern perspective of where the band is now. We're not used to hearing sampling like this from them much, and especially not in this crunchy, lo-fi, really noisy kind of way. I don't know if the audio quality of the film is this bad, or they probably made it sound worse on purpose for aesthetic, Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the introduction of it, and that goes on for a few seconds, but eventually we get into an actual song. The song is completely instrumental. There's no vocals here. It's just a instrumental opener, but after that film sampling, it gets into this really simple, funky groove that is led by this electric piano organ kind of instrument. Pretty fast-paced, grooving drums and bass and everything, and it's definitely an energetic start, and I don't even know how else to describe it. It's just this weird, funky, groovy intro that lasts a couple minutes and just throws you right into this mess of a record, really.
Yeah, 15 to 20 seconds in is when the tune itself, the tune proper, kind of starts. According to the information, according to our research, this was Stu's way of testing a new synthesizer he had bought at the time, and it sounds pretty groovy. Like it's played over this driving rhythm. The drums and the bass kind of keep this very steady rhythm going. There's really not any change to it throughout the course of the song. There are a couple little drum fills. Other than that, this is a very straightforward driving track. The keyboard is playing this kind of boom, 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 and you feel like you're just ready to go for a ride down the highway, sunglasses on, sitting in a convertible. It's kind of nice doing 80 down the freeway sort of music. But disclaimer, listeners, please be careful, drive safely. Anyway, it has this nice retro sound the keyboard does, and I really think it sounds very Doorsy to me. This sounds like
okay.
You think so too?
I'm glad you said that. That's exactly what I was about to say. Especially the keyboard itself, very Doorsy sound.
Yeah. Ray Manzarek, the keyboardist from The Doors. This sounds like something right out of his catalog, and that for all we know, that could have been a primary influence for Stu. I don't think he's ever mentioned that band in particular as an influence, but bands and artists, even if they don't mention them by name necessarily, they draw influences and little things here and there from other artists that we the fans are sometimes none the wiser about. But this is a cool tune, and even though this is a leftovers record, just kind of a song scrapped from here, a song pulled from there, just kind of slapped together on one album, this is nonetheless a cool way to open this album. It's groove, it's driving rhythm. It almost gives the feeling of, okay, let's get this motor started. Boom, 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 and you're ready to go. Your blood's flowing, and you as the listener are fully invested and ready to go.
This isn't something that I looked into at all, but I'm curious just thinking about it now. Spencer, do you have any idea what Aluda Majaka means or translates to? Like, is there any sort of real meaning behind it? Why the band might have chosen this?
I'm glad you asked, because just yesterday I went down a whole rabbit hole of trying to figure out the meaning of Aluda Majaka. I typed it into Google Translate, and I'm trying to do it again here in real time. As I type in Aluda, Hindi is a language that's detected. Aluda translates to potatoes. But as I type in Majaka, the word potatoes goes away, and the phrase becomes plum joke. I have no idea what the deeper meaning is here, other than I stumbled upon a couple of subreddits, a couple of Reddit threads, and it seems like it's this kind of Indian cultural thing that, if you don't live there, if you didn't grow up in the culture, it's something that probably goes over your head. Something involving a son-in-law and a joke.
All right.
That's about all I've got. So if you are more well-versed in Indian culture, the Hindi language, please let us know. We're very curious. All right, moving on to track number 2. Let's check out Stressin'.
For a song called Stressin', this certainly is a very laid-back and chill song. According to Stu, along with Work This Time, this was an attempt by him and Joey to write soulful music, and I think they really kind of hit the nail on the head there. This is a very chill, very soulful, I think is a great word for it, song, and Work This Time as well. There are a couple examples of more of this kind of gentler, softer, calm and chill, but meaningful and from the heart kind of songs here. And this is the first example of those. I think they really hit the nail on the head and made that work.
Yeah, they did make it work, and I'm glad you pointed out the fact that this just sounds so laid back, and it's I hesitate to say cheerful necessarily, but it sounds very relaxed and collected, especially for a song called Stressin'.
Right.
The lyrics, which we'll get to in a minute, I'm sure, do reflect kind of more of the stress and anxiety aspect of it, but for the most part, musically, it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of stress or tension coming through, with the exception of maybe a couple of chords that are played back to back. It's this boom, 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 and then there's like a boom, boom, boom. Those establish a little bit of tension for me, at least, because it feels like this unresolved sort of grouping of chords or of notes played. So that, to me, is the only part musically that communicates the whole stress and anxiety aspect of this song. But backing up a little bit to the beginning of this track, I want to point out that drum sound. It's that hazy, distorted, like weird lo-fi, like psh, 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 like almost like the drum heads are made out of paper.
Yeah.
And the the drumsticks are it doesn't sound hard. The attack is not hard. It's I don't know, it's weird. I don't speak drummer, so that's about all I've got there, but that drum sound is really present throughout most, if not all, of the album, and I think it's really intentionally placed here on track 2 to right close to the top, kind of give you a sampling of, this is where the band was. They were still very much in their kind of grungy, distorted garage band days, and so they're going for all the distortion and effects and kind of the look what we can do and look at all the stuff that we're capable of, and it definitely has its place in the catalog and gave way to sort of a different style of distortion in the years to come for the band. But that drum sound, like I said, here at the beginning of this song, you're going to hear a lot of it here on Oddments.
Yeah, not only just the drums, also the bass as well. I feel like they both have a very quiet, soft, muted kind of sound. It almost sounds like the drums were recorded with like a single microphone from like 20 feet away in the room or something. Like it's just, they sound so soft and kind of distant. And, but it works for the effect of what they're going for here. As we have stated, this album has been described as lo-fi psych rock, and there's a whole lot of lo-fi. So that's just a big example of it there. They're not going for super crisp, clean production. It's got this very garagey, homemade kind of sound that definitely feeds into. Another effect and kind of sound of this song that always stands out to me. The guitars, they're both clean, so they're very clean, they're very smooth. They add to the overall chillness of the track, but they have this constant tremolo effect on them, and that's going to come up on this album again later as kind of a recurring thing. But if you don't know what tremolo is, I don't know how to exactly define it. I just know what it is from playing guitar and stuff for a while, but it's that kind of warbling effect in the guitar where it's like wah, 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 wah. Instead of like the notes constantly smoothly ringing out and everything, they're constantly like doing this wobbling, like almost in and out of the volume, like the volume being turned up and down really fast, I guess basically is the best way to describe it. That same kind of sound will make its way to us again on a later track in an even more obvious and apparent fashion, so I'll bring that up again later. But those basically sum up the musical elements of this song. Again, it's pretty down-tempo, it's pretty chill. And Spencer, you mentioned a very calm and mostly positive sounding, at least instrumentally, but there are a few elements that hint at, stress or anxiety or whatever, and there's a couple lyrics that give us the general story and vibe about that as well. Simply, the lyric, "I'm stressing about what I've been missing," really just is describing a really simple message about stress and anxiety, and even more particularly to me, it's all about FOMO, the fear of missing out. Like this person is, maybe absorbed in certain things going on in their life, and they're afraid of what sort of life things or fun things or whatever they could be missing out on because of other stuff they have to deal with or whatever, which is certainly something that I can relate to.
Yeah, and after that opening little lyrical line, "I'm stressing about what I've been missing," after that come the lyrics, "and I feel it. Stressing is an instinct. Stress colors all of my dreams orange." I want to talk about that. There are certain colors that indeed do evoke certain moods. Orange and red in particular are colors that are often associated with stress and anxiety, sometimes anger, and this is, of course, like certain bright, unbearable shades that are really not the best, like for example, to paint your bedroom in these colors. Like, I remember when I was younger, in fact, I think I thought about, what if I painted my walls red? Like, this is when I was like in grade school or something, and then my parents were just like, I don't think you would like that very much. and so that was probably a wise decision on their part to kind of slam the brakes on that idea for me. But yeah, if you were to really associate a color that your dreams would be drenched in or your thoughts would be soaked in, associated with stress or FOMO or anxiety, orange would certainly be up there. And then there's also the lyric, "I'm biting down on my jaw. Oh, now is making all my teeth sore." You get to that point when you're so stressed and angry, you start grinding your teeth and gritting your teeth so much, and it literally makes your facial muscles sore. I was actually just getting off a little bit of a cold here myself, here on the tail end of winter, and I was getting that sort of like facial tension. I was literally sitting at work during downtime, massaging my facial muscles, and so that was influenced by the cold I had come down with, but stress is kind of a similar thing. Like, it consumes your whole body, it makes you tense, and you gotta let it go. Even though these lyrics are from a song so early on in the band's career, this is a song on this album that for me is a sign that you can tell these guys are going to grow and progress. You can tell that there's more around the corner.
Yeah, for being as young as they were when they made this and how kind of early on in their career this was, it's a very well-written song, and yeah, certainly points forward into the future of being a marker of like, okay, yeah, these guys got something in them. They're capable of writing some really good and poignant stuff.
We've referred in recent episodes to some of the songs that don't get a lot of love at live shows, as well as some of the songs that do. A lot of tracks on this album really don't get played very frequently, if at all, here in this day and age. Stressin' was recently busted out at Red Rocks this last September. I know a lot of people were happy to see this one make a live show appearance. So, Red Rocks, The Gorge, Forest Hills, those are like the top three kind of spots if you're going to get those long sets. You have a feeling the band's going to break something out, and it was cool to at least hear. We obviously didn't get to go, either of us, but it was cool to see the band kind of bust this one out, an overlooked track in the catalog for sure.
I think that's all we have to say about Stressin', a great track. So let's keep moving forward on to track number 3, to the most important song, and may I dare say, the GOAT of the entire KGLW discography. This is Vegemite.
Oh, Vegemite. Yes, they are an Australian rock band, an Australian metal band, Australian psych band, whatever you want to call them. Yes, they're Australian. Of course, they're going to sing a song about Vegemite, and I think they knew how on the nose they were being by writing a song about Vegemite. This one goes back a long ways, and this is one of the songs on the album that really goes back to when the band was really either, late teens, early 20s. This one, I believe, was all Stu's doing. According to the KGLW.net page on this song, Vegemite is an ode to the food of the same name, a song about eating Vegemite on toast with your girlfriend, according to an interview with Stu with NME, the music outlet there. The lyrics are very simplistic. The music is very simplistic. This is one of the more rudimentary tracks on the album, and for me, and I'm not putting it down by saying this, but for me, this is definitely one of the more standout examples on this album of, okay, yeah, the band was still very young. They knew they had a passion for music and they wanted to succeed and go far as a band. But this one is really, you can tell they were still like practically babies compared to where they are now in terms of composition and writing and musicianship. That being said, this song is so fun and so funny.
Yeah, my first time listening to this album, it definitely was a bit of a head scratcher for me of like, what the hell? They actually made a song about Vegemite. Like, are they purposefully trying to be the Australian stereotype as much as possible? It certainly brings to mind the 80s hit Down Under by Men at Work, where he, is traveling the world and being stereotyped everywhere he goes. And, there's even the lyric, he made me a Vegemite sandwich is in there as one of them. So yeah, I don't know, maybe there's some inspiration there, but I agree. This definitely seems like a song that was, at least for the most part, entirely a Stu idea, a Stu sort of passion project, I guess. He's been quoted as saying that he's a big fan of Vegemite. And by the way, right here might be a good time to mention exactly what Vegemite is for anyone out there who is not familiar. It is a thick, dark brown, salty Australian spread made from leftover brewer's yeast, vegetable extract, and various spices. So it's basically like this dark, pasty sort of textured spread, similar consistency maybe to like jam, or even a bit thicker than that actually. But yeah, it's very popular. It's a big Australian thing. I've never tried it. I've heard mixed reviews of some people thinking it's absolutely disgusting, both Australians and people around the world. But yeah, being that I've never tried it and Stu loves it, I do kind of want to get my hands on some at some point and try it out. So we'll see if we can make that happen. But yep, simple as that. The song's all about loving that stuff. And like you said, eating it with your girlfriend, I guess.
Yeah, it's all about loving that stuff. Unless you're Joey. I want to juxtapose opinions, quotes from Stu and Joey. This came from a live show in 2014. I guess Stu said at one point, "It's a song about Vegemite, which is an Australian spread you put on toast. Everyone who's from anywhere but Australia hates it and thinks that it tastes disgusting. I think it's pretty sweet." Meanwhile, Joey says, "It's a yeast extract that's derived from vegetables. Tastes like human shit, and everyday Australians eat it for breakfast." I read that for the first time, and I just cracked up, because that's pretty funny. I'm a picky eater, so there is a very big chance that I might not like it when I eventually get my hands on it. So all in all, a very basic track. A couple of parts of the song that I do want to point out. Stu's Australian pronunciation of tomato when he gets to the line avocado and tomato.
Yeah.
Love that. Absolutely do love that.
Avocado and tomato. I love it. I love it.
But as I'm listening to this song, I was reminded earlier this week when re-listening to this track, years ago when I was like, I don't know, 12 or 13, I had these loose aspirations to form a band one day with my brother and a couple of our cousins. I think I was going to play the guitar and sing. My brother was going to be the drummer, whatever. We never actually wrote any songs. Like, I did have a guitar, but we never wrote any songs. Like, I just didn't have that sort of pathway in my brain formed. I was never a musician, still really am not. But I am convinced that as simplistic as this song is, this is 100 times better than anything my dumbass non-musical brain could have come up with. So still kudos to Stu and the guys for making a song like this, young as they were.
Yeah, I feel that sentiment very much as someone who also tried doing similar things, writing songs in their youth and playing around with instruments. And yeah, I don't think I could have come up with this masterpiece myself. So fair right there. So we've talked enough about what the song's about. It doesn't get much deeper than what we've already said, but musically, it still follows that rough, gritty, lo-fi sound that's apparent on this entire record. It starts with this insane, loud, reverbed out drum noise before it kicks into the main song. So it's kind of like a jump scare when the song first starts off. And that returns again at the end, right as the track comes to a close. There's this loud, echoing, reverbed, like overdriven, just loud bang of the drums that just scares the shit out of you and just is like a giant period at the end of the song. Like, enough said. That was Vegemite. Like,
yeah.
it's just over. It's abrupt, and there's a handful of abrupt endings on the album, but that's definitely the biggest, most like loud and obnoxious of the bunch, I think. So this song was played live a bunch of times back when following the time after this album came out. It was kind of a fun one that they played. I think a good amount of times throughout 2014 and maybe even a little after that. But it made its most recent appearance at the Gorge just this past September on their North American tour. And that was the first time in 8 years that Vegemite has seen the stage. It wasn't part of their set list. It wasn't meant to be played, but it was kind of a placeholder because basically if you listen to that Gorge set, and I know that's been a really popular one that people have been enjoying, so maybe you've already heard it, but they were playing Venusian 1, and basically the mosh pit was going way too hard. They broke the barricade at the front in between the crowd and the stage, so they had to stop the show for a minute, let the security and everything, the maintenance people take care of it, put it all together, and in the meantime, they're just kind of shooting the shit. Joey actually FaceTimed his mom and called her and showed her to the crowd and everything and said hi, which was funny. And then out of nowhere, Stu's just like, oh, should we do Vegemite? And they just kind of busted into it fully a cappella. They didn't play it at all. It was just kind of, I think maybe a mix of him, Joey, and Ambrose singing it together. Just a cappella. It wasn't the full song. It was maybe like 30 seconds or so. But really just kind of a fun moment to see that. You could tell the crowd was really excited to get that special little moment just as a placeholder before they got back to their set. So really fun stuff there. But I would love to see them bring it back as a staple. Do the full song again. I want it.
Yeah, this song, polarizing though it is, I know some people think it's way too childish and too rudimentary. It is a very, like we said, a very early product of the band's output, but still has the associations of just that fun youthfulness. We need to note also that this was an advanced single off Oddments. It was released 2 months ahead of the album back in early 2014, and there is a music video associated with it. It's just such a comically absurd video. Basically, Stu is sitting at his kitchen table eating breakfast with a couple of pieces of toast spread with Vegemite, and eyes and a mouth are superimposed on both the slices of toast, a la Annoying Orange, if you remember those annoying-ass videos on YouTube. I don't know if it's Stu's eyes and mouth. It might be somebody else's, but those they move, first of all, like they're lip-syncing with the lyrics, and Stu's just kind of eating breakfast. He takes a bite of toast, and then he decides, I'll pick up my acoustic guitar right here at the table, strums a little bit, takes another bite of toast, goes right behind the table to play the piano that's up against the wall a little bit, comes back to the table, and it's just like this home life setting while he's got his instruments close by. Fair warning if you're grossed out by these things, near the end of the video, there is a very close-up shot on Stu's mouth as he takes bites of this Vegemite-laden toast, and he chews with his mouth open a little bit, surely just intentionally for the content, and it's just this and I think I audibly just went like, oh, like the first time I saw that. But it's a funny, just like goofy video. Definitely check it out at least once. So that wraps up our thoughts on Vegemite for the time being. Let's move on to track 4, It's Got Old. 'Cause it's got old.
It's Got Old, man. This is a super chill, bluesy, and folksy song, and it is mega catchy as well. This is one that has quickly grown to become one of my favorites on this album. It's one of the less kind of youthful and goofy sounding, and one of the more kind of sincere and mature songs of the album, I feel like. The song to me has a very Murloc sound to it, which if you don't know already is Ambi's other band. And funny enough, coincidentally or not, the Murlocs put out their very first album, Loopholes, only about a month or so after the release of Oddments. So I get the idea that this was a very Ambrose-driven song. I don't know if he wrote it, or I think maybe him and Stu wrote it together, but either way, the harmonica has a big, strong leading place on this track. It feels very, very Ambrose, like he is just all over this thing, and I just absolutely love it. It's such a good track.
Yeah, it definitely feels Ambrose forward, and I love this song too, man. It's a good one. Very bluesy. It was originally considered for inclusion on 12 Bar Brews and then on Float Along, Fill Your Lungs. Of course, it didn't make the track listing for either of them in the end, but it fell here on Oddments, and really a standout here on this collection of old, otherwise scrapped, if you will, songs. I feel like we haven't talked about a nice harmonica forward song in a while, but here we are.
Yeah.
A unique combination, by the way, of these basic acoustic chords and the ripping harmonica, and also a little bit of flute thrown in there.
Yes.
Mostly in the verses. So this is such a unique feel, even though we so easily point to, yep, bluesy. It hints at maybe a little bit of Fishing for Fishies 5 years further down the road, or maybe with that ripping harmonica. The ripping harmonica could theoretically fit in on I'm in Your Mind Fuzz to a certain extent. But, this just has so many different characteristics, like I said, with the acoustic, which, by the way, to me almost acts like more like an agent of the rhythm section in this case, because this very rhythmic doom, doom, doom. It's the acoustic guitar is not playing much of a tune. And I like how different of a feel that is. The flute kind of provides some nice little trills. Stu's vocals are very simple, so it doesn't feel like there's too much going on, despite the unique arrangement here.
Yeah, it really is some special and unique instrumentation we got on this one. This very may well be the first time we've heard a flute on any Giz track at this point. I mean, we talked a lot about, on our Mind Fuzz episode, how there's a lot of flute, and that was around the time or not too long after Stu was first learning it, because he wanted to learn a new instrument every year and stuff. But I mean, this is going back, about a year or so before that. So I think this really might be the very first Giz track with flute on it. And you know what? There is a chance that maybe the flute could be simulated through a synthesizer or something, but to me it sounds very natural. There's even some of those like overdriven blows and flutters and trills and stuff that make it sound very real as far as actual acoustic flute goes, so I believe it is. But yeah, I think it's got to be maybe the first time he used one on a song.
Yeah, we'll have to go back and cross-reference that another time.
I was not able to confirm ahead of time, but that's what I'm thinking now. So along with that, of course, we mentioned very harmonica forward. The harmonica is just ripping and carrying this melody in between each of the vocal sections. There's also, in the rhythm, there's really simple drums, very chill, kind of mid-tempo, but there's also these hand claps, which is something that feels so foreign in a Giz song. Like, that sounds like such a, I don't know, poppy thing to do or something, but like, there's these hand claps that just fit right into the rhythm, and those actually come up again on another song later. I'll have to bring that up when we get there. But yeah, really just awesome acoustic production, really clean, still kind of lo-fi, but as far as how some of these songs go, I think it's pretty crisp, pretty good sounding, and yeah, it's one that I come back to very often. I just really love it.
This song's lyrics really have the energy of adolescent frustration in a relationship. Well, I'm always saying I'm sorry, you're always saying you're broke, but I'll keep my hands on the steering wheel if you keep your eyes on the road. Full stop there. That sounds a little bit dangerous. I'll keep my hands on the steering wheel while you keep your eyes on the road. So the driver physically has their hands on the wheel and is doing the steering, but is evidently not the one looking at the road. Yikes.
Yeah. Or he is the driver and he's just basically saying, like, just keep your eyes forward. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe they don't want to talk right now or something like that. So maybe it's more of just kind of like I'll keep driving, you just do your own thing, keep your head straight, don't look at me, don't talk to me. I don't know.
I mean, I was translating it pretty literally, but I was also going to just theorize, like, maybe it's more of a, I'll stay in my lane, you stay in yours. Like we're clearly not getting along right now, things aren't going well, let's just, play it straight down the middle, see if we can rectify this. But, this is a young relationship, clearly on the rocks. But continuing with some of the lyrics, but it's not like you anyway to hide your sad face away. It ain't gonna stay the same, 'cause it's got old. You'll always run me in circles, chasing me around like a mouse, but I'll keep on watching this movie if it means I can stay at your house. There's definitely a vibe of, I'll stick with this because it just feels like the right thing to do to see this through, but, for now, we have to really tread on eggshells around each other, I guess. That's the best I can come up with here.
I think it's pretty clear maybe to both the speaker and their partner that, like, this isn't going great, this relationship's not really working, we're not the same that we used to be, but they still have this slight feeling of, like, maybe we can make it work. And maybe the keep my hands on the steering wheel is almost maybe in a way trying to say, I'll try to fix things, I'll try to steer this relationship in the right direction, kind of keep things going steady as much as I can. But yeah, there's some very obvious recognition that it's not working right. It's getting old, literally. Like, things just aren't what they used to be. Yeah, so all in all, a pretty simple, straight ahead, chill, bluesy, folksy rock song, man. It really is, always stands out as a highlight to me on this album. A great song, and it just kind of ends with a simple fade out, and that's it. Just kind of trails off into the distance. And then we move along into the next track. This is Work This Time.
Well, a second straight song here with some young relationship troubles as the lyrical backdrop of the tune. This is, we'll say right from the get-go here, this is the band's most streamed song on Spotify. As of this recording, it has 48 million and counting streams on Spotify. And I have read that the main reason for this is because it was featured on some lo-fi playlists. Spotify and the other listening services will generate some of these, specific vibes or genres types of playlists, and this was on a lo-fi playlist at one point or another, maybe still is. But a lot of people I know will put on some lo-fi music in the background while studying or working or, whatever the case may be. And this one kind of fits right in with a lot of that musical aesthetic or genre. There's so much tremolo, which I know, Joe, you referred to on an earlier track here on the album.
Yep.
That tremolo, that lo-fi gritty production, the vocal production on Joey's vocals. This is Joey, by the way, singing on this song. First time we're hearing that on this album. And just overall, it fits so much of that lo-fi description, I could put in all capital letters underneath the description here in my notes. Lo-fi, enough said.
Lo-fi. Yeah, enough said. Yeah, you brought up the tremolo again. So this was the other song I was talking about. I mentioned it in Stressin' earlier, how it was a prominent sound of the guitars on that track. But this song, Work This Time, takes that to the max and applies tremolo to the entire mix. Like, the entire song is like wobbling with this tremolo throughout the entire runtime of it. And it's something that's a little weird and disorienting when you first hear the song. At least it was for me, but it's just one of those little things that grew on me over time, and I don't mind now. And in fact, I find it to be actually a really kind of interesting standout feature of the song.
Yeah, same. I like the reverb-drenched guitar that's playing the lower notes, that woo, 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 that feels a little more in the background, but there is kind of that sharper guitar right up front. At least that's the best I can replicate it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all these guitar noises, these like high-pitched like slides and things with lots of delay and echo and reverb on them that just create these cool noises and space within the song.
And in both cases, the higher one and the lower one, talking about the guitars here, this was kind of one of the earlier cases of King Giz establishing what would become a trademark of theirs in the years to come, that real tremolo or reverb-heavy guitar. We would hear a lot of it, of course, in the Mind Fuzz suite, on what would be the following album after this one, and then for several albums down the road, that would come again and again on various tracks here and there. But I have to say, maybe we want to make this a little recurring thing on the show here for episodes to come after this, Joe. I have what I'm going to call a production peccadillo. For those who don't know that word, a minor offense or a fault is what a peccadillo is.
Okay, I was going to say that one's new to me. Normally it's the band giving us English lessons, but you've got a new word for me today. So, okay, let's hear this out.
You're welcome. Yes, of course this song is intended to be lo-fi. However, when I'm listening to this song specifically in headphones, some of the sounds are so harsh and sharp on my ears that I occasionally have a hard time getting through this one as a result. So I have a much easier time listening to this on a Bluetooth speaker or on my car stereo because of that. Those higher pitched guitar notes that I mentioned with that heavy reverb or tremolo effect on it, as well as, I don't know if you noticed this, Joe, some of Joey's vocals, notably the S's and the SH sounds, as well as some other consonants that he sings, just have that like hiss on them that just like burrow into your eardrums. It's just like, So,
yeah.
While I enjoy and appreciate the aesthetic of this song, and I appreciate what they were going for, there are certain moments scattered throughout the track that kind of make me go, So that's my production peccadillo here.
That's fair. I have moments like that with, especially their older music, but just there's a variety of their songs sometimes that have little elements of things that just kind of come off a little harsh on the ears or whatever, especially these older ones with this lo-fi thing going on. And I actually have a funny note about the vocals. So yeah, I agree. The S's are kind of sharp. It was actually hard for me to tell that this was Joey. For the longest time, I thought it was Stu singing till I actually researched it at all, because it's just so heavily processed. Yeah. And I wrote down that the vocals kind of sound like they were recorded with like 2 cups and a string in between, like the classic cartoon, like talking to one person through a cup with a string. That's what they sound like to me. Like just so crunchy and just I mean, for lack of a better word, like terrible sounding, but in a way that kind of fits the overall song, and that I don't really mind too much, but I do see where you're coming from with how they could be a little harsh.
I feel like I spent a lot of time just now ragging on the song a little bit, so I want to talk a little bit about what I appreciate about it. This is quintessential gray, gloomy day type of music. We talked pretty much off the top of the discussion on this track how it's, another young relationship on the rocks, guys trying to make it work, though. The overall sound, the production, the arrangement of the song and what the notes played on the guitar and the various instruments are communicating to us, this really does feel like there's a strain on this relationship. And the person, obviously Joey in this case, singing, but the narrator or the main character here and the theme of this song, there's some fretting going on. We talked about how Stressin' earlier in this album didn't really fully reflect the feelings of what was going on in the lyrics. This is just totally full of yearning and strife and struggle. You're sitting by the window on a gray, gloomy day, because isn't it always that way when you're going through relationship struggles or some sort of life trial or tribulation, and you're just like zoning out, just like thinking, oh, what can I do to make this better? And we'll get into lyrics in a second here, but just such an effective package when you consider all things as a whole here in the song. You really feel it as a listener.
Yeah, it has this similar rocky relationship sort of theme that It's Got Old did previously, but in a little bit more of an abstract way. I feel like it doesn't come right out and paint the picture as clearly as the last song did, but it is still very obvious that it's in a similar vein, similar kind of thing being hinted at and talked about here. The very first line of the song, I knock hello, but I see that you've got hypothermia, which sounds kind of abstract, but I think it's really hinting at the fact that the relationship they had has gone cold, so to speak. It's not working out. Things are rocky, things are icy. So the last song was It's Got Old, and this one you could call It's Got Cold.
Yeah, it's got cold, really, yeah. The lyric after that, so I place a block to stop the rot and hope that I can warm you up. Do I have to shake you, babe, until you're blind? Because every light bulb's gone and I'm feeling so inclined. I don't think that's really a literal, I'm going to shake you until everything is better, like shake all the bad feelings out of you. But I think there's just... I think what he's trying to communicate here is he's just like worrying and maybe freaking out, like, what can I do to make this better? Like, please, let everything be okay. Please, we can do this.
Yeah.
That's very emblematic of that, young love, and you never know who or what you're going to find after if this one doesn't work out. Pretty universal experience here. After the lyric that I just cited, though, is what I guess we can call the chorus. Can never lay my whole head down, repeated 3 times over. I know I'm lazy, but baby, I will work this time. So evidently, to me at least, it seems like this guy in the relationship has been slacking a little bit in terms of not giving the relationship the attention or the care that it needed, but he's kind of realizing almost too little too late. Okay, no, I'll be better. I'll straighten up.
Yeah. I'll work this time. I'm going to really put in the real effort now, even if I've messed up something before or didn't put my all into the relationship. I swear this time I'm going to really put in the work. I'm going to make this work. Everything's going to be okay. So yeah, that's what I'm getting out of this. One other small thing to mention, I think I did already say this at the top of the show, but this is the longest song on the album. Coming in at only 4 minutes and 36 seconds. This is, I think I said this already, this is not the Giz I know. This must be a different band.
# not my Giz.
Not my Giz. Certainly not anymore.
So right here on the heels of the longest track on the album, let's go to the shortest one. Just careful not to blink or you'll miss it. This is ABABCD.
Yep. That was it. That's the song. That's the whole damn song. 17 seconds of God, what the hell is going on? It's so fast, you can hardly make out anything that they're saying. The vocals are so, well, once again, lo-fi and crunchy and distorted. But it's got this weird kind of fun, catchy thing going on here, and there's a good reason for that. This was actually a TV show theme song written by Joey. There was a show of the same name, I believe also out of Australia, called ABABCD, and it was a music central show consisting of 20-minute episodes that hosted 4 to 6 different musical acts performing on specially designed sets that were made just for them, I guess. King Giz appeared on the show's 3rd episode, performing The Raid from Eyes Like the Sky, as well as Head on Pill, which I think was cut out of the main show because that song's just too long, and they also dragged it out longer than the studio version, I believe, but that was later released due to popular demand, so you can watch that on YouTube. I will say, though, if you do want to look it up, the show is kind of hard to find because when you search ABABCD show on YouTube, you just get a bunch of children's content that comes up, or at least I did, so that wasn't very helpful. But if you just go to the KGLW.net page for this song, there's a video embedded right there of the full performances of, I think, of both of those songs.
Yeah, that show was, for me also, in my research attempts, kind of difficult to corral some of the content on this show. I have to add also that one of the co-creators of the show aforementioned, his name was Nick Clark. He said in an interview about 10 years ago. The name is a subversion of ABABCB, the verse-chorus bridge form of a song, so it's inferring it's a structure you're familiar with, but something slightly different. And that's the end of that part of the quote there.
Ah, yeah,
so,
okay. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, something along those lines. That's sort of what I had in mind.
So a creative naming device and background there for the title of the show as well as the title of this track. Let's talk about the track itself. I'm not even going to call it a song because it's 17 seconds of just raw energy. A fun little burst of energy, I might add, though, because this is like straight up old early Gizzard, like raw power garage band feels. Just that fast strumming of the guitar. It's like very punky sounding. And the lyrics are as follows. There are only 6 or 7 lines here. ABABCD will show you how it feels to be stuck outside your sanity and wrapped around infinity. I want to leave, but I can't conceive that I'll snap back to reality. I'll snap back to reality. So there's a rhyme at the end of every single line. I like everything that they put into this little 17-second snippet that was a theme song. And that's about all I have to say about this. It's a fun little burst of energy right here about the middle of the album.
I will say, you mentioned some history sort of on where the show got its name and therefore the song as well. Is there any particular reason why the D at the end is lowercase, but the rest of it is uppercase?
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I wonder if it was maybe just a stylistic choice of, if you were to put all of those letters in capitals one by one next to each other, all 6 of those letters, it would look just like one continuous block almost. Yeah. I wonder if the stylistic choice here was to kind of put, let's put a little something different here at the end to give it a little like visual intrigue. That's my only thought on that.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go with that. Moving on from this short little 17-second burst, we got another more normal length song coming up here, and another super chill one. This is Sleepwalker.
Sorry. I was asleep. Sleepwalker. 7th track on the album. Dude, I fucking love this song. It's very catchy. It's probably one of the catchiest hooks on the entire record. A reworking of a Willoughby's Beach song, I should add. So, doing our typical research on the KGLW.net page, that was one thing that jumped out to me immediately. This would have fit in pretty effortlessly on Willoughby's Beach. It's got kind of a little bit of that surf-derived sound, some of that, tremolo reverb. It would have fit well, suffice to say, on Willoughby's Beach. What also caught my eye on the page in the midst of my research was that this song was originally entitled Who? He parentheses Sleepwalker. So I'm wondering if initially the lyrics actually were, asking and then answering itself, who? He, rather than just sort of these vocalizations, who, he. I wonder which one came after the other, or if it even was
I didn't
the
even
actual
put 2 and 2 together
in the case. Yeah. So interesting little footnote there. But like I said, it's just so catchy and, a real high point on the album for me.
Yeah, I love this track very much as well. It does have this kind of false start at the beginning with a few descending synth notes, and then we get a drum count in and goes right into the song, the actual rhythm of the song. There's more acoustic guitar here, so that, once again, is keeping this one nice and chill like some other tracks we've heard so far, and very fitting for a song called Sleepwalker, but it's not too chill. It's still nice and upbeat and fun, and has more of those hand claps that I mentioned earlier. This is the other song, like It's Got Old, that has these big hand claps in the rhythm that just add to the bouncy kind of fun nature of it. The dreamy lead synth that has that false start in the beginning, that kind of really is like the carrying element of this song, really does take the lead on the melody here, and it really does paint an appropriate soundscape for the nature of this song. It is very dreamlike, very kind of mysterious and ethereal sounding.
Yeah. When I was still kind of at the peak of my cold that I was dealing with here, I was wondering if I was going to have to resort to NyQuil on some of these work nights here recently. Thankfully, I didn't have to, but part of me just wanted to put this album on and just as I was kind of conking out to the NyQuil, have this song going and just have the experience almost take me away in a pseudo psychedelic kind of way.
Let the NyQuil take you away to see the Hat Man and sleep for 10 hours straight.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that like you said though already, Joe, that keyboard, that synth, that organ sound, it's just so dreamlike and cool, and it just sort of swirls through the song and gives it that dreamlike quality. But you've got Stu's very catchy hook of the chorus. There really aren't a lot of different lyrics to discuss here. The vocalizations, the ooh, hee, hee. Well, I want to walk in the ocean. Is that maybe like for someone who sleepwalks, like, yeah, I'm just gonna go where my feet lead me. I'm not really conscious now, so yeah, might as well go out to the ocean.
Yeah, or maybe just sort of a will to like disconnect and literally drift away, like drift off to sleep and then also drift out into the sea, kind of thing. Like just wanting to disconnect from reality and a little bit. I'll be honest, I'm gonna keep it 100, folks. This is a weird, trippy track, and as much as I do like it, I don't fully understand exactly what's happening, so we're gonna have to talk through it a little bit. But yeah, that's sort of what I get from it.
A little after the midpoint of the song, there's the lyrical passage, if you're thinking, then you're thinking too hard, so squish your brain, whoa, numb the pain. That's, I think that really hammers home your theory there, Joe. Just kind of disconnect and chill. Maybe it hints a little bit at the, have a psychedelic experience with this if you so choose.
Right.
Yeah, but that's really all about there is to the lyrical meaning on this song. 2 attached points on this track. One, I saw a rumor a while back, and I believe it was on the subreddit somewhere, that some people believe that this song was written with Joey in mind. Joey's last name is, of course, Walker. So, in titling the track eventually Sleepwalker, that maybe Joey had a sleepwalking problem at one point. There is no evidence to that I'm aware of, so we're just going to leave it at that. That may or may not be true. Also, my other point here, on an album that's otherwise littered with songs that don't get much love in live set lists, this song has been played quite a few times. 31 times this song has been played live by the band. However, only one time on this past 2024 tour when they broke it out on March 18th, day before my birthday, in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So this is one that I would like to one day experience in person at a live show. It is unfortunately one of those older tracks that's starting to get buried the more and more music they release. That's just such the double-edged sword with this band, man. The more music they put out, the more stuff kind of gets squashed in the discography and just kind of gets washed away in the set list.
Right.
But this is a popular one. I think people tend to love this one. I am obviously among those.
Yeah, I think it would be a lot of fun, just kind of swaying back and forth, drifting around with the crowd going, ooh, hee, hee, hee. Like, I could see that being a fun time. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, great song. Would love to see it make more of a stronger comeback in the set list. But we'll see. Sometimes they surprise us, like the a cappella Vegemite. You just never know what's going to happen.
You truly, truly never know. Let's move right along. We're going on to track number 8 now. This is Hot Wax.
Under the door, it's coming under the floor, it's creeping under the hill, it's creeping under the sill.
Yeah, Hot Wax. So speaking of live shows, this is one that's made much more live appearances. In fact, according to KGLW.net, it has been played 84 times, most recently at the Fox Theater in Atlanta, Georgia, on this last tour, the second leg of the North American tour this past fall.
This is a home recording by Stu and Ambrose, and it does have that soundscape of a home recording, very rudimentary and raw sounding, but so much fun. Stu, of course, sings the lower parts, and this is about as low as we hear Stu in his singing register on any album. He would, of course, develop a little bit of a different vocal style in delivering at these lower registers on later albums, thinking about like Petrodragonic Apocalypse, where he gets a little more refined. He's very growly here, and I do like the way that it sounds for the purposes of this song. And of course, Ambrose contributes the higher-pitched vocal sections on this song. We should note also, this is Ambrose's only vocal credit on the album. His voice does not appear, at least to my knowledge, it really doesn't sound like his voice appears anywhere else on this record. But this is such a fun, kind of bluesy, kind of surfy, kind of psychedelic, and therefore emblematic of early Giz energy sort of track here. And lots of basic, easy, coupled rhyming lines, one after the other. Hot wax crawling under the door, hot wax crawling under the floor, hot wax creeping under the hill, hot wax creeping under the sill. I have fun memories, Joe, of when we used to work together. That machine that we worked on most days, we utilized hot wax, as a matter of fact, as part of our production process on the machine. And after you got me into Giz and I became familiar with this song, we would make up our own rhymes off the cuff. I don't know if you remember that, but I have fond memories of that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I certainly do. Yes. There's a great quote here from KGLW.net that basically sums up the lyrics here. The lyrics are repetitive and establish a strange fascination of stews with sludgy engulfing liquids. So if that doesn't sum it up, I don't know what does. Yeah, that just hot wax it's getting everywhere, man.
It does have a way of getting everywhere. Yeah. The music video, which this is the only other music video accompanying a song on this album, the other one being the aforementioned Vegemite. Music video is trippy in a funny kind of lo-fi production way. It's got Stu and Ambrose. They're the only two band members that appear in it. This is pre-mustache Ambrose, by the way. As someone who just got into Giz a couple of years ago, I've basically never known Ambi clean-shaven. So anytime I see him from older photos or videos, it's just like whoa, okay, yeah, you're different. And in a similar way, Stu with the much longer hair than he sports these days. So there's a kind of a rudimentary, cartoonish-looking psychedelic landscape behind and around Stu and Ambrose. You know, there are candles with the flame lit, and then there's wax dripping down the sides of them, and then there are little bits of animations that go with the lyrics they're singing. You know, hot wax coming over the hill. There's like a hill that forms. Hot wax under the sill. I think there's a windowsill that you see, and it goes on and on. There are drums that appear, like animated drums, and they start filling with these swirls of colors.
Yeah,
that's pretty much the gist of this music video. But yeah, again, hinting at the psychedelic yet still very, very surfy kind of feeling at the same time. In fact, to the extent where Stu swipes a line from the Beach Boys' Surfin' Safari, to the point where he literally quotes, "Hot wax, come on now, everybody's learning how, come on a safari with me," before going back into hot wax. So he just straight up apes that line from Surfin' Safari. My best guess here, and this is like based on no evidence whatsoever, my total wild guess, I wonder if Stu was writing this song and just singing some scratch vocals as he went along, and then decided to fool around and sing some Beach Boys while he played the song, and then he just figured later, what the hell, let's leave it like that.
Yeah, I love it. Just so funny, and it's so weird for them to just have a Beach Boys lyric just dropped in like that. There's a couple interesting audio elements going on here that I have to point out. One, right at the beginning, right after the song kicks off, you hear these like vocalizations, these kind of creepy like like sounds coming in. And you know what I'm talking about if you listen to it, but it's just these, I don't even know, these weird, haunting, ghostly like mouth sounds. And then there's also this repetitive rattling spring sound effect that's just exists throughout the entire track. And I always kind of wondered what that was. I knew it sounded like a reverb spring, like some amplifiers, the way they generate reverb is with these big springs inside of them. So I thought maybe he's like hitting something to make that. And I was very close. It's coming from a spring reverb guitar pedal, specifically from Stu hitting that pedal. So not using it as intended, but smacking it, and that rattling sound echoing through the recording. So there's a quote right from him here. "I do have one of those big yellow Dan Electro Spring King pedals, which can be pretty cool as a studio tool. That's the sound on Hot Wax that keeps coming in. I was just punching one of those." So yeah, he's literally just smacking it in rhythm to the song to generate that sound effect. I think it's a really cool element, and I just love that they do weird shit like that, and they think of all these things of like taking a normal thing like a guitar pedal and completely flipping it on its head of how it's supposed to be used and turning it into a percussion instrument.
Very Eddie Van Halen of him, another musician who was known for kind of Frankensteining things together and making them his own, just to to accomplish this very specific musical purpose that he was trying to achieve. So another, we cited a song earlier in the album where lyrically it's like, okay, there's something there with this band. They're gonna go places. Here's a musical example in terms of gear that you could tell these Stu and the guys are innovators and forward thinkers. Like, oh, what if we did this? Let's try that, and it creates something so fun and unique. This song is another catchy one, and I have found myself kind of singing this one to myself over the past couple of weeks as I've been re-listening to the album in preparation for recording this episode. But yeah, another high point on the record for myself, I would say. And yeah, I really do enjoy this song.
At the end, the song slowly fades out until it is totally engulfed with reverb as it comes to a close. And yeah, that's about it. That's Hot Wax. As I said, it's become a staple. It's played live pretty often. And it's another weird, goofy one. Perfect example of everything that this record is. Next up is the first song featuring Cookie singing. This is Crying.
Okay, so Crying is Cookie's lone vocal appearance on this album. We just heard, of course, Ambrose's lone vocal appearance on the previous track, Hot Wax. But really, Cookie makes the most of his lone singing opportunity on this record. He wrote this song, by the way, at the age of 16. Not half bad for a 16-year-old, gotta say.
Yeah, I was really impressed reading that because you kind of mentioned earlier, like trying to write music when you were younger, and that we never even could have come up with something as good as Vegemite. So this is like especially impressive for a 16-year-old, and it's not like it's the deepest, most incredibly well-written song ever, but it's good. It's really lyrically and musically competent, and yeah, just really impressive.
Absolutely. And just to read over the lyrics very quickly, again, not very complex, but definitely a step up from what you would think a normal 16-year-old to be capable of. Came in my window crying, said that she's sick of all his lying about me. I said I ain't got time for her. I'm going to close the door when I go walking out, 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 out. And of course, he draws out and vocalizes the word out several times in his own way, which we'll get to in a minute. Following verse came to me Monday morning, interrupted me in my mid-morning yawning. He said the same thing that she said. Well, I just turned to him and said that she ain't mine, 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 mine. So it's not just this kind of low-hanging fruit of, line A rhymes with line B, then another A and another B, and, it's just not really a traditional structure, and I think that's really impressive that Cook was able to, cook up something like this. Sorry, I'll get out.
I'll see myself out.
I'll see myself out, yep. But yeah, this is a change of pace, of course, on the album, a little more mid-tempo, and you can hear some pain and some yearning, but it's not a depressing-sounding track. It's kind of a, letting out the frustration with a cry, especially in the way he delivers the out, and then later on, mine, and just that distinctive Cookie register. Another solid song here, man.
Yeah, and this is yet another track where it does involve a relationship, but seems to take place post-breakup, post-relationship, where the speaker's ex and her new current partner are both complaining to the speaker. At least that's what it seems to be to me. Like they're like complaining to him about each other, and this guy is just like, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to be involved. She already broke my heart or whatever, and that ended. And the lyric, you're bound to make your guy cry, is basically saying like, his ex, this person is bound to just break another heart just like she did to him. That's what I take from it.
At about a minute 30, maybe a little after, approximately the midpoint of the song, it gets to this spoken word part of the track that I really enjoy, and I think that speaks to a little more Cookie confidence. In this case, he's not just singing it straight through. He's going to do this Elvis, like, are you feeling lonely tonight, or whatever that song is, where Elvis does that spoken word.
Yeah.
Cookie says, baby, you always acted like, baby, you never cared. With the way you act, girl, you're bound to make your guy cry. And then he starts singing again with the cry 4 times over part. Around that section of the song, though, we've talked about reverb and tremolo quite a bit on this album. A slightly different method, a slightly different texture of it here. It's surf sounding. It's this, and it's just so evocative of like a late 50s, early 60s. Like the name that comes to mind for me is Link Wray, who, for those not familiar, he was kind of an early electric guitar, tremolo, kind of surf sound pioneer, before the Beach Boys, before Dick Dale kind of came into vogue. And he had this famous song, Rumble, which was an instrumental song that got banned from the radio for sounding like it was going to spur on violence, like scuffles in the street among youths or whatever. The song was called Rumble, and it's like this, like you can almost picture, kids down the alley like peering at each other, almost like Old West style showdown or shootout. And that was banned from the radio. What I'm trying to say is this guitar sound just has like that very retro, reverby quality to it. It sounds literally like something taken straight from a Link Wray or a Dick Dale song, and I love it. Let's go to the next track, which really isn't a song, so we'll just call it a track. Number 10 on the album is Pipe Dream.
Pipe Dream is essentially just an extended ending of Crying and kind of acts like an interlude of sorts, although normally an interlude exists somewhere around the middle point of an album, and we've only got 2 tracks left after this one. But yeah, it's just basically an extended ending. It has this continuous single synth note that carries in from Crying, for the entire duration of it, which is about a minute or so, and more of the stew smacking the reverb pedal sound as well, and some bass and guitar grooving that goes on for a little bit, but it slowly starts to fade out after not too long. It is very short. It's not much of a song on its own, but still kind of cool, I guess, kind of a cool continuation of Crying and the way that it carries us towards the end of the album.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, kind of an extended outro to Crying. If I'm being honest, a little bit weird that it's designated as its own track here on the album. But like you said, still cool in its own right. Neat sounding little piece. The title, by the way, is intended to be a reference to Pipe Eye. For those unfamiliar, that is Cook's other band. Check out Pipe Eye if you never have. He's got his own kind of quirky, fun little style, and he just put out a new record just last year that's worth listening to. Cook had actually started Pipe Eye fairly recently around this time, I believe. So, of course, this album was from 2014, and Cook had, for a while, kind of been noodling off on his own stuff. But yeah, I think that the title was meant to be kind of a cheeky little wink of the eye. It's kind of like, yeah, it's a pipe dream from the guy behind Pipe Eye.
Yeah, and he actually would put out his first Pipe Eye album the following year in 2015. So it kind of makes sense timeline-wise that he was leading up and gearing up for that. All right, next up, track number 11, the penultimate track of Oddments. This is what I believe is a very special and really unique song of theirs, Homeless Man in Adidas.
In Stu's description in the album reissue liner notes for this song, he described this song as an attempt to make quiet music, and in my opinion, they certainly succeeded. This is just a nice kind of folky, like soft alt-rocky kind of feel on this penultimate song. Very much a Wilco or Fleet Foxes kind of song with that soft acoustic guitar strummed and just the soft ambiance of the whole song as a package. And there's this sound in the background throughout the whole track. I don't know if it's like a tape hiss or crackle, but it almost sounds like a fire crackling in the background. And I highly doubt that's what it actually is, but for the theme of the song, that would almost be appropriate. Homeless man in Adidas. You picture some poor man down on his luck sitting, on the side of a building. Maybe he's got a barrel fire going next to him just to keep warm in these harsh winter days. doesn't have much. He's wearing some shabby clothes. He doesn't have money to really get by on anything. And this song strikes an interesting balance for me of, being about a very sad topic. Like I said, a man down on his luck, really doesn't have a penny to his name, but it's from his first-person perspective of like, hey, I'll be okay. This is all I know. The city keeps me company. I'm not lonely. Trust me, I'm okay. This is all he knows. So he's just surviving, and he's like, yeah, don't worry about me. I'm good.
Yeah, and real quick before I add on to that, I just want to say you mentioned that constant crackling noise that could almost represent a fire or something. I always thought of that as the sound of rain, which I feel like is also very fitting, of someone who's, currently doesn't have a home and is out on the street or whatever maybe on a rainy night, just kind of taking in the sights and sounds around them. But I mean, either way you spin it, whether it's rain, whether it's fire, it really adds to the very chill and very folksy and sure, as they intended, quiet nature of the song. And of course it's completely acoustic as well. So it's really just a really cozy, complete, perfect vibe. And yeah, really, really calm, really comforting sounding song for something that, should be kind of a sad or tough topic to deal with, homelessness and stuff. But this guy is content, even though he's experiencing these issues, down on his luck, as you said, he's able to find fascination and comfort in the landscape and people around him with, the lyrics, the city keeps me company, and also sit on the roof and watch the cars travel past, ain't no way of getting lonely, and I'll sit real still and watch everyone go fast with only me. So they're making the best of it, just kind of, they don't have anything else to worry about, I guess, in a way. Like, obviously, being homeless is like one of the worst kind of situations you could be in, not even able to keep a roof on your head when things are going that rough. But, regardless of that, this person is still finding comfort. Like, I got nothing else to worry about. I'm here. I'm just taking in the sights and sounds. There's people all around me. I'm not truly alone. So it's kind of uplifting in that way.
Yeah. And I've always wondered why the brand drop, by the way, in the title, Homeless Man in Adidas. I have a couple of loose theories on that. One, the band probably wanted to call the song something more than just Homeless Man.
Right.
That would have come across as just a little blunt and weirdly short. I find it interesting, first of all, that there's a brand drop from a band that really doesn't do that. I can't think of a single other instance where the band drops a brand name of any sort. But I think it does paint a picture. It gives a little detail. This guy, whether this person, whether they're wearing a worn out pair of Adidas tennis shoes, or maybe it's a brand new pair that some really kind person just said, hey, here you go, and they scored that.
Or a tracksuit, a snazzy tracksuit, perhaps.
Or a snazzy tracksuit, yeah, it could be. But whatever the case is on that front, it just paints another kind of humanizing picture, I think, of this poor person who insists, maybe they have that kind of lone wolf identity established inside them after falling on these hard times. Like, hey, I've come to terms with it. I'll be okay. And you can just sort of picture, you can build a more effective mental picture with that little Adidas detail. So a nice touch from the band there.
Musically, I also want to mention that there aren't many instruments on the song besides just Stu singing with an acoustic guitar. However, there is some very light percussion. There's what sounds like the tapping of a hi-hat pedal or something. And if you listen really closely, and I didn't notice this for a long time, but you can kind of hear what sounds like some hand drums, like bongos or something similar, way down in the mix, really quiet, but you kind of hear it more towards the left channel. So if you have headphones, you'll hear it in your left ear. You can definitely notice it better with headphones on, but just interesting how barely there it is, but it still adds something.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just love the overall environment, the aesthetic, the feel of this song. I can't say enough good things about this one. I think its inclusion on this album was a smart decision in showcasing how many different styles of music the band could succeed at. And as I mentioned earlier on this podcast, this was a point where the band was at a crossroads. They were starting to graduate from that kind of gritty, overdriven guitar-centric garage rock sort of sound predominantly, and they were starting to branch out a little bit. So this was a very early example of, hey, these guys are not a one-trick pony.
I really do fully believe that this is, if not the most unique, but at least one of the most unique songs the band has ever put out. It's just so stripped down from anything else that we've ever heard from them since, and just this quiet, calm, interesting perspective, interesting lyrics, just everything about it is so unique and special. I really do love it. One final little note that I hear towards the end of the song, right as everything's kind of fading out, the music fades away, you're left with just that crackling rain or fire, whatever it is, kind of sound. And right at around 3 minutes, 13 seconds, before that crackling sound fully fades out, it sounds like there's a sound that sounds like a parrot screeching or some shit. Have you noticed that?
No, I don't think so. I'll have to go back and check it out.
Yeah, listen at 3:13, right around the end of the song. There's like a like it's just like I hear like this squawking or screeching, like which adds even more to my thought of it being rain, because it's, I don't know, I feel like I'm outside in like a forest or something and it's raining and you just hear the squawks of birds in the trees or something. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and listen to that, and one of many examples of some weird random ambient noises at tail ends of tracks we've discussed before. Yeah. So yeah, worth looking at. So let's move on to the final track on the album now, and quite a weird jump in energy level from one track to the next. The title track, to finish things off, this is Oddments.
Okay, coming in at a mere 25 seconds. This one's a little too long to play the full song, probably, like I did with ABCD, but you just heard most of it. Yeah, this is the quirky sort of cap at the end of this weird album. This is fast-paced closing credits, essentially, of a very quirky album, and it's fast-paced, it's high energy, and it's just a really abrupt ending that honestly couldn't even be more fitting for such a weird collection of odds and ends that is this record.
Yeah, totally. The only lyrics on this track are Oddments. There is nothing to care, 'cause it's all that I will ever do. Odd. It's ODDMENTS. Odd. Ments. I like the split kind of slow reiteration of the word at the very end there as the instruments kind of melt away.
I think that's Ambrose at the end, maybe.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like it. A peek behind the curtain here. We are recording this episode the Friday before Super Bowl Sunday, and I have to say, very appropriate that the last track we talk about on this episode is something in which a word is spelled in a chanting kind of sing-songy way, because where we live in southeast Pennsylvania near Philadelphia, a lot of people are going to be spelling EAGLES, Eagles, right about now.
Go Birds!
And hopefully in a victorious way. Go Birds, yeah, man. I posted on the Instagram story a while back that, hey, this podcast, we are Eagles stands here on Super Bowl Sunday coming up. So
that's right.
That is who we will be rooting for, of course. So hopefully, we will get a winning result on that on Sunday. So all the good luck and the good vibes to the Birds. Hopefully they can pull it out over the opponent they lost to 2 years ago.
I'm really hoping that this doesn't age badly or jinx things at all, because of course this episode is coming out quite a bit after the Super Bowl will have already been over, and we'll have the result and know how it went. So yeah, just tread carefully here.
Yeah, absolutely. I attached to this, Joe, I have to ask, how much money would you give me if I provided you with video evidence of me when everybody else around me is chanting Eagles, spelling Eagles while watching the Super Bowl, if I did Oddments instead?
ODDMENTS, Oddments. I don't think I'd pay you anything, but it's a funny idea.
Okay, well, fine then. Hey, I still might do it anyway. No, that's it would especially be goofy coming from a person who actually does care a lot about sports. I mean, that sounds like
right.
The stereotypical thing that a person who yells things like "Go Sports" might do.
Right, go Sports.
Which I always do find that entertaining. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, not a lot to talk about on this ending track, but very goofy sort of end credits like, okay, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.
Yep, everybody get out. We're done here. It's over. So with that, let's do the usual torture that we put on ourselves and pick our favorite and least favorite tracks. Spencer, why don't you start it off for us?
Okay, this was tougher than I expected it to be. I sort of started with a handful of tracks. I believe 5 was what I had to whittle it down from. Here are the 3 that I arrived at finally. It's Got Old, Sleepwalker, and Homeless Man in Adidas.
Good
just
picks.
to justify each of my choices here, It's Got Old. Dude, it's got Ambrose on that bluesy harmonica. That's going to win me over every single time. Okay, that was a no-brainer for me. Sleepwalker just has such an infectious hook that I love to sing along with, and definitely a fan favorite in its own right, so that was a must for me to include in my top 3 favorites. And Homeless Man in Adidas, I have been loving this kind of music over the last few years. Quiet, acoustic guitar, maybe a little bit of ambient noise, like in this case. But the softer side of Giz, like Paper Mache, or like I mentioned, Fleet Foxes, Wilco, some other soft music I've really enjoyed over the last few years. As I've gotten into my crusty old age of 32 now, soon to be 35, or 35, geez, soon to be 33. Freudian slip there.
Old man.
But I've come to...
Speaking of it's
I've
got
come
old,
to-
you's got old.
Hey, shut up. No, I've come to enjoy this soft music so much, and I really appreciated that song's inclusion on this album. So I'm really curious to hear what your top 3 are now.
Okay, yeah, great picks, and we are very close with the exception of one of them. So I also went with It's Got Old and Homeless Man in Adidas for basically the same exact reasons you mentioned. But instead of Sleepwalker, that was a really close one for me. I also struggled narrowing my list down, but I went with Work This Time as my other favorite. To me, that song just has like the prettiest guitar melody out of all of these songs, and obviously you listed some reasons why it's not perfect. The vocals are a little harsh. There's some kind of weird production elements with it. It's got that weird tremolo thing going on the whole time, but overall, I find it to just be a gorgeous song. I love the guitar melody. It's really pretty, has a great meaning behind it that's very relatable, and I just love singing along to it, probably more than any of these other songs. So those are my top 3. How about your least fave?
I might make some enemies with this one, so I'll just say it, get it over with. Vegemite.
What?
I understand its place as a favorite for many people. Like I said, it's polarizing. I gave that disclaimer earlier. I even enjoy it in its own little goofy way, but I think just between the simplicity of the lyrics and just the I don't know, the music just isn't all that advanced. There's just not enough for me to grasp onto. And also, we talked about some of the harshness of Work this time. There's some of that element still present as well on Vegemite. That knocked it down a half peg for me. I did feel really bad about giving this to Vegemite. I, of course, didn't count any of the short, like, a minute or less tracks in consideration here. I didn't take those into account for this. So, yeah, reluctantly, I'm going with Vegemite.
Okay, all right, fair enough, I guess. For me, I actually had a hard time narrowing this down too. I wrote down 3 songs for 3 different reasons, and I think they're all pretty easy, maybe kind of unfair picks for different reasons. Well, first of all, I wrote Pipe Dream, which it's only a minute long, and as we said, it's kind of this extended outro of crying, so I don't even know if that's fair for me to put as a least favorite song, but it is still its own track, so if anything, I would put that as my definite least favorite overall. ABABCD as well, but that's another easy pick because it's the shortest song. It's just 17 seconds of mayhem that you could barely make out and make sense of, but it's still kind of fun in its own way. If I had to pick another one, maybe if those are too short to be fair, I would say the opener, Aluda Majaka. It is only instrumental. Yeah, it is only instrumental, which is maybe also not fair because we do pick on the instrumental songs. Sometimes they're easier to put below some other songs. I think it's a cool, groovy-ass opening track, but like just because of the fact that it doesn't have any lyrics, anything that I could sing along to, and not as much of like a, I don't know, consistent melody to me, I would put that also. So I'm giving basically 3 least favorites this time just because it feels unfair to put it all on one of these for different reasons.
Okay, well, it's your choice. Yeah, this is probably the most like contentious and shocking that our least favorites have been at the end of an episode so far in the history of the show.
Yeah.
Hey, we live for the intrigue, right?
Yeah, we gotta really milk this. Get like some clickbait thumbnails out there and everything. Like, you won't believe what songs they absolutely tore apart and hate on this album.
Yeah.
Just totally blow it out of proportion.
Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed our discussion on Oddments this week. That was a real fun one, kind of a different feel, as we said early on, from Ice Death Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava, step back in time, and we step back in terms of simplicity versus complexity. So that was a real good time, man. Just a quick plug of our social media outlets, by the way, if you want to reach out to us with anything we can share on the show, or if you just want to see all the stuff that we do share on a regular basis. We are at Podagon Infinity on Facebook, X, Instagram, and newly on Blue Sky. So if you're not following us on Blue Sky yet, please do get over there. We're having a lot of fun, and actually our following has grown quite a bit quicker there than on X, I will say, and good riddance with recent events out there in the world.
For probably pretty good reason.
Yeah, definitely.
Not as many people using that platform anymore, and that's completely fair. I myself don't use it anymore, so
yeah.
I already haven't for a while, honestly.
So come join us on Blue Sky. We would love to have you there. A nice little Giz community is forming there. And by the way, we're going to switch things up a little bit for the next episode. Joe will be out of town, so he will not be recording. I will be taking the reins solo for the very first time in the history of the show. You will recall that recently I asked for a little bit of your input on what songs you would like to hear in your dream set list for a Giz show, and I'm going to use those responses and try and fit those into this sort of dream situation set list, and it's basically going to be a build your own set list episode, so I'm looking forward to that. It'll be a little bit different not having Joe with me, but he will be back for the following episode. That's the plan at least, and that's going to be a fun, different exercise, and I'm looking forward to putting that one together for you.
Yeah, after you do your solo ep, I will listen to it, and I will judge it harshly, and I'll come back and fix it if the set list is really bad.
Oh,
so,
fair enough.
I'll make some edits. I'll make my edits when I can.
Okay, sounds good.
But yeah, I'm going on a little skiing trip, so wish me luck that I don't break anything and that I make it back safely and get back to the show as usual after that special Spenser episode next time.
All right, well, break a leg, Joe. I mean, don't really, but yeah,
hey,
have fun.
Don't you put that on me, Ricky Bobby. All right, until then, that is it for today. I hope you've had fun talking all things Oddments with us. Of course, my name is Joe.
And my name is Spencer.
See you later, Gators. Woo! The lyrics are repetitive and establish a strange fascination God, there's so many like sounds there that I can't fucking say back to back. Strange fascination.